We're going to be taking a special Thanksgiving trip along the Super 3. Come on, let's go. Alright everyone, happy Thanksgiving, and to celebrate Thanksgiving this year, we're doing a reboot to the Massachusetts 3 video. Not only are we doing Massachusetts 3, we're also doing US Highway 3, because those two roads form a super long highway that runs from US 6 in the Cape Cod area all the way up to the New Hampshire and Canada border. It is a very scenic road, especially in northern New Hampshire, and it also goes through the town of Plymouth, where the first Thanksgiving was held at. So, let's get started with the Super 3. But first, you're watching The TheDerpHog, where I make highways content on all sorts of different topics. If you've been enjoying it, be sure to hit that like button, and if you've been really enjoying it, be sure to smash that subscribe button so you're notified on all future videos. And if you really want to help out the channel, become a member today, where you get custom cool emojis, early access to future videos, along with one free Azure request per month. And if you don't want to become a member, you can always just pay $3 for a intersection request in future videos. Those highways will be listed down in the description below, and I'll make sure to shout you out when that video releases. So let's get on with the highway. As you can see here, this is the map of the Super 3, as it consists of Massachusetts Route 3 in blue, running from US 6 in the Cape Cod area all the way up to Boston, and US 3 running from Boston all the way up to the New Hampshire and Canada border. So with that, I'm going northbound on the Super 3. So we begin here at US 6 and Massachusetts Route 3, where we can see that Route 3 is getting signed north for Plymouth and Boston, while US 6 is going to be heading west towards Buzzards Bay. Also, we will be seeing this next week when we do US 6 westbound too. And here is where those two roads split, and we can see that we're still getting signed north for Plymouth and Boston. And once we get onto Route 3 itself, we get this cool distance sign telling us that we're going to be meeting US 44 in 15 miles, and it'll take about 15 minutes. And Route 139 will take about 26 miles in 26 minutes. Here's our first major exit on Route 3. We get Route 3A, which will take you into Cedarville along with downtown Plymouth. And on Route 3A, we can see that we're now still getting signed for Plymouth and Boston. Here we get our first mileage time, with Braintree as our secondary from 35 miles away, and Boston still as our primary from 47. Here we meet with US Highway 44 getting signed east for Plymouth Center, which will take you to downtown Plymouth, and US 44 westbound and Route 3 are going to be concurrent as they head towards Boston. Also, if you want to check out a video on US 44, I did that for last Thanksgiving, which in the top right corner here. Here's where US 44 splits off from Route 3, as it will take you over to Taunton and Providence. And at Random Junction here, Route 3 is now assigned north for Quincy and Boston. And here in the Braintree area, we're now going to be joining with Interstate 93 for a short time, and we're going to be heading north toward Boston. And here's where we split off from Interstate 93, as Route 28 is now going to be concurrent with Route 3 as we head towards Cambridge now. And here is Route 3 splitting off from Route 28 here, as it's getting signed for the Government Center in Kendall Square. Route 3 doesn't go to the Government Center, but it does go to Kendall Square. And here's Route 3 crossing on the Longfellow Bridge over the Charles River here and onto the other side of the Boston area, or the Cambridge area. And here we get a nice view of downtown Boston, as Route 3 is traveling through the Cambridge side of Boston. And then Route 3 ends here at this junction with Route 2A, and this is where it becomes into US 3 now. And on US Highway 3, we get some pretty cool views of Boston still, so that is pretty awesome. And here we meet with JFK Drive here, which will actually take you over to Harvard. Now we're meeting with Route 2 and Massachusetts Route 16, as we can see that we're now getting signed for Medford and Somerville. Here's where we split off from Route 2, as US 3 and Route 16 are still concurrent with each other. And then further up the road, we are now meeting with Interstate 95, and we're going to have a wrong way concurrency with the interstate. as we're going to be heading south towards Providence. Here's where we split off from Interstate 95, which for some reason does not have any control cities, but US 3 does have a control city of Nashua, New Hampshire, which I think is a good choice. And on the distributor ramp, we actually get Lowell and Nashua, so Lowell is also a good secondary. Here in the Lowell area, we meet with the Interstate 495 being signed for Lawrence and south for nothing. And we're also meeting the Lowell connector here, which will take you to downtown Lowell, while US 3 is going to continue north towards Nashua. And at Random Junction here, we're now getting signed for Nashua, so that is a good choice. And we're now entering into the state of New Hampshire with that Welcome to New Hampshire sign. I like that motto, live free or die. Here we meet with Route 3A, and we can see that US 3 is now getting signed for Manchester and Concord, which are awesome choices. And then here's where we split off from the Everett Pike, as it's getting signed for Manchester and Concord, while we're going to be concurrent with New Hampshire 101A, which will take us into downtown Nashua. And after going through downtown Nashua, our next control cities is Merrimack and Manchester respectively. Here we are meeting Interstate 293, as it's been signed for Boston and Concord respectively, and US 3 and New Hampshire 101 are still getting signed for Milford and Manchester. Here is downtown Manchester. This is pretty cool looking area. And here we are meeting Interstate 93 for the first time as US 3, and we can see that it's getting signed for Salem and Boston in one direction. And let's see what we're signed for on Interstate 93. It looks like we're now getting signed for Hookset, so I think that's an okay choice. It is faster to take 93 to Concord, and we can see that 93 is getting signed for Concord. And at a Ram Junction here, we're now getting signed for Concord in Hookset. And in the Concord area, we meet with Interstate 93 again. And US 3 is basically a parallel road to Interstate 93 here in New Hampshire. And here in downtown Concord, we meet with US 202 and New Hampshire Highway 9. And on the north side of Concord, US 202 splits off to join with Interstate 393 here. And let us see what we're signed for on US 202. It looks like we're now getting signed for Pennacook. I don't like that choice at all. That's just a neighborhood here in the Concord area. That should definitely be Franklin, New Hampshire, not Pennacook. Here we are now meeting with US Highway 4, and we're now going to have a short concurrency with US 4 as it'll head east towards Concord and west towards Franklin with us. And when we split off from US Highway 4, we can see that we are now getting signed for Franklin, New Hampshire, which is a great choice. Here in the Franklin area, we meet with New Hampshire Highway 3A, which will take you up to Andover and Bristol, New Hampshire, while we're going to be following 3 here, which will take you to Laconia. In fact, when we meet Interstate 93 for another time, we are now signed for Laconia. And here in the Laconia area, we're now getting signed for Meredith as our next control city. And here in the Meredith area, US 3 is now getting signed north for Plymouth from 15 miles away. And here we meet with Interstate 93 once again, and it's also getting signed for Plymouth and Campton. And here we meet with New Hampshire Highway 25 in the Plymouth area, and we're going to have a short concurrency with it. And here we finally get another mileage sign. This time it's a one-liner for Campton from 6 miles away. And here in the Campton area, we'll meet with New Hampshire Highway 49 here, which will take you into downtown Campton, along with to Waterville Valley. And at a Ram Junction here, we're now getting signed for West Thornton from 6 miles away now. It looks like that we're getting signed for the next town because we're still paralleling Interstate 93, which is totally fine. Here we get another mileage sign or a one-liner with Thornton from 3 miles away. And here in the Thornton area, we're now meeting with Interstate 93 once again, and we're now getting signed for Woodstock along with Thornton. And here in the Woodstock area, we're now getting signed for North Lincoln and Woodsville, as we're meeting New Hampshire 112 here. Now we're going to be joining with Interstate 93 for a short time, as we're now going to be on the Franconia Notch Parkway. And this road looks absolutely stunning. It looks like Interstate 70/US 6 in Colorado out there. I'd like to drive this road someday. And here's some more awesome scenery along the Super 2 of the Franconia Notch Parkway. And here's some more awesome scenery. This road is just absolutely beautiful. I like the scenery here. And after that beautiful stretch of road, we split off from Interstate 93, and we are going to be saying goodbye to it forever now, as US 3 is going to be meandering north towards Canada. And we can see that we're now getting signed north for Twin Mountain and Lancaster. And here we meet with US Highway 302, and we can see that on 302, US 3 is getting signed for Whitefield now. So I wonder what happened to Lancaster. Though in the Lancaster area, we'll meet with US Highway 2, and US 3 and 2 are going to have a concurrency as we head towards Groveton now. And our next mileage time, we get Groveton on the top line from 9 miles away, and Colebrook now as our primary from 36. I agree with Colebrook because the last major or sizable town we'll be passing through. And this is where we meet with New Hampshire Highway 110, and we get some more awesome scenery with the mountains there in the background. And this here is in Colebrook. We're meeting with New Hampshire Highway 26, and we're now getting signed north for Pittsburgh, which is the last notable town that US 3 will be passing through. And here we meet with a road that will take you over to Vermont 253, and that will take you up to Canada as well. And US 3 is going to be continuing north through rural New Hampshire and to head up to Canada too. Here is our last major junction on US Highway 3, as we're meeting with New Hampshire Highway 145 here in the Pittsburgh area. And before we get to the US-Canada border, we get this sign telling us that the Canadian customs are closed between 8 p.m. and 8 a.m. And the same thing with Vermont Highway 253. And here is the Canada customs. So we're going to be turning around and going southbound on the Super 3. So we begin here, right outside those Canada customs, and we can see that we get a reassurance shield right away, and we are totally in the middle of nowhere. And after that reassurance shield, we get a welcome to New Hampshire sign, and I kind of like the other one better because I don't think this color yellow and blue mix very well. But at least we do get that live free or die motto on there. And our first major junction, we can see that we're now getting signed west for West Stewartstown. And in West Stewartstown, we're now getting signed for Colebrook, which is a great choice. Here in the Colebrook area, we meet with New Hampshire 26 once again, and we're now getting signed for Lancaster. And here in the Lancaster area, we meet with US Highway 2, we're now going to have a concurrency with it. In our next mileage time, we get Whitefield on the top line from 9 miles away and Gorham from 26. I believe Gorham is actually for US 2 here. And here's where we split off from US Highway 2, as US 3 is going to be continuing south towards Twin Mountain and other southern New Hampshire places. And we can see in this one random town, we're now getting signed for Twin Mountain and Franconia. And here in the Twin Mountain area, meet with US Highway 302 once again. And we're going to be continuing south towards Interstate 93 and the Franconia Notch Parkway. Also, I like this view of the mountains at this US 302 junction. And here's where US 3 is merging into Interstate 93, and this is just one spectacular view. And here's where US 3 splits off from Interstate 93 after that Franconia Notch Parkway concurrency. And we can see that we're now getting signed for North Woodstock and North Lincoln. Are those places even actually real? Why not just Woodstock proper and Lincoln proper? Here we meet with New Hampshire Highway 112, and we can see that we're now getting signed for Thornton now from 10 miles away as our next control city. And we get a one-liner here with Thornton from only 4 miles away. And here in Thornton, we're now getting signed south for Plymouth from 8 miles away. And here in the Plymouth area, we're now going to be meeting New Hampshire Highway 3A and New Hampshire 25. And let us follow New Hampshire Highway 3A. Why not? It is looks pretty interesting. And it looks like that it's getting signed for Bristol, New Hampshire from a good 18 miles away. And this is where New Hampshire 3A splits off from New Hampshire Highway 25 to head towards Bristol, while New Hampshire 25 will take you to Rumney and Woodsville. And here in the Bristol area, New Hampshire 3A is now getting signed for Franklin now from 15 miles away. And here in Franklin, we reunite with US Highway 3 proper, and US 3 in New Hampshire are now getting signed for Salisbury and Concord. Here we meet with US Highway 4, and we're now going to have a short concurrency with it once again. And we can see that we're now getting signed for Pennacook this time. And I agree with it going southbound here because US 4 is heading towards Interstate 93, and if you want to get to Concord, it's faster to take US 4 to Interstate 93 than to stay on US Highway 3 here. So Pennacook makes sense this direction. Here in the outskirts of Concord, we meet with Interstate 393 and US 202 once again. And 202 is now going to be concurrent with US 3 here. And here we get a pretty cool view of downtown Concord on this US 3 and 202 concurrency. And here is where US 202 and New Hampshire 9 splits off from US 3, as US 3 is going to be continuing south towards Manchester. And at a random junction here now, we're now getting signed for Pembroke and Manchester from 3 and 14 miles away respectively. Here we meet with Interstate 93 once again in the Manchester area. And now we're meeting the road that will take you over to Interstate 293, as US 3 is going to be continuing south into downtown Manchester. And after going through downtown Manchester, we meet the Everett Pike, and we can see that it is getting signed for Boston, while we're now getting signed for Merrimack, which I think is an okay choice, because if you want to get to Boston and Nashua, it is better to take the Everett Pike here, but though you will probably be paying a toll on it. Here in Merrimack, we're now getting signed for Nashua, which is a good choice. Here in the Nashua area, we're now going to be joining with the Everett Pike, as US 3 is now going to be signed south for Milford in Boston. And we're now entering back into the state of Massachusetts, and there is a Welcome to Massachusetts sign here, so well done, MassDOT. But at random junctions here, we're now getting signed for Lowell and Burlington, so it looks like that MassDOT is for some reason neglecting Boston here and sending Burlington over Boston. Here in the Lowell area, we meet with Interstate 495, and this time Massachusetts Route 110 does get some control cities, and 4995 also gets a control city of Marlborough too. And we can see that we're now finally signed south toward Boston. Here now we're going to be joining with Interstate 95 for a short time, and we can see that we're now getting signed for Boston and Peabody, while 95 South is getting signed for Providence, which is a good choice. Here's where we split off from Interstate 95, as we're now heading south towards Winchester. Okay. While Route 3 is going to be heading up into Burlington. And here in the Winchester area, we meet with Massachusetts Route 16 getting signed for Watertown and Boston. And we're going to be concurrent with Route 16 westbound here. And on our way to downtown Boston, we are now meeting Route 2, and we're now going to have a concurrency with that highway. And this is where Route 16 splits off from Route 2 and US Highway 3 here, as it will take you into Watertown and North and West Newton. And this is the southern terminus of US Highway 3, as it will continue now as Route 3, and it will take you down towards Boston. Here we get a reassurance shield for Route 3 after ending at US 3. And here's Route 3 crossing over the Longfellow Bridge once again, and look at this spectacular view of downtown Boston. And now here's where Route 3 is going to be joining with Interstate 93 southbound, heading towards Quincy in the Logan International Airport. And we can see that we'll also get a reassurance shield for US Highway 1. Hey US 1. After a long concurrency, we're now splitting off from Interstate 93, as we're now getting signed south for Cape Cod, which is a great choice. In fact, our next mileage time, we do get Cape Cod from 39 miles away, and Plymouth is our secondary from 25. Here at random junctions, Route 3 is getting signed south for Plymouth and Cape Cod. Here in the Plymouth area, meet with Route 3A, and Route 3A will be taking you into downtown Plymouth, so let us follow Route 3A into downtown. Here we meet the eastern terminus of US Highway 44, getting signed for Middleborough and Providence respectively. And here we pass by the Pilgrim Hall Museum on Route 3 in downtown Plymouth. And here's a nice look view of downtown Plymouth as we're heading through this nice little town. And once we get back onto Route 3 itself, we're now get a Welcome to Cape Cod sign. I couldn't find one on Route US Highway 6, but at least there is one on Route 3 here. And then we finally end here at US Highway 6 as it's being signed west for Buzzards Bay in Falmouth, while Route 6 is going to be continuing into Sagamore in Hyannis, all along to Route 6A. And always down the road, once on US Highway 6 proper, we do not get an end to Route 3 shield, but we do get a Route 3 mile marker 0, so telling us that Route 3 does officially end at US Highway 6, which is okay enough for me. I would prefer a end shield, but at least there's a mile marker 0 here, so alright. So with that, we end the Super 3, and we move on to all the places I'll go. So these are all the places that I'd visit if I ever was on the Super 3 in the New England region. If you have any places that I should visit along this cool highway, please let me know down in the comment section below. I'd love to visit these places if I'm ever up in that region someday. So that ends the Super 3. Thank y'all so much for watching this short Thanksgiving episode on the Super 3. I hope you got to enjoy learning a little bit more about US Highway 3 and Massachusetts Route 3. And I hope you have a happy Thanksgiving. And if you have any intersection requests for any of my upcoming highways, please let me know down in the comment section below, and I'll make sure to shout you out once these highways release. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see y'all next week as we complete the rest of the 6 series. Bye!